I feel really blessed because I found an amanita mushroom under my chair. We don't have the classic red and white ones here, but we have the yellow version here. And those are the red and white version is supposedly where the Santa Claus story came from, because reindeer will eat them and get this kind of euphoria. And if you drink the reindeer's urine, you also get that euphoria. If you eat the mushroom, you'll be very, very, very sick. But the whole idea of Santa Claus, the red and white, the flying, and the reindeer, supposedly came from that mushroom. So, symbolism in stories is non-duality. It's both the most direct way to teach something and the most hidden and obscure. So, one thing that I came to understand over the past few years was that Snow White is one of the very best non-dual stories. And you start to understand this when you don't see it through the lens of identifying with the main character that these things are happening to. But you see that it's actually symbolizing things for you right now, and that all characters in the story are teachers and are an aspect of the main character, of the author. So there are no true characters, and I use this analogy a lot, that source or God is the author with a capital A, and we feel suffering and we don't create the things we really want to create when we are identifying with the character. But that suffering is guidance, and it's very good, and it shows us the direction we want to go in. So it's not that we suddenly become above suffering, but that we start to listen and appreciate our emotional guidance. Anyway, so Snow White is not talking about a skin color. It's not pointing to any sort of purity in a sexual way. It's actually pointing to awareness itself, which white light includes all colors, all potentiality, and yet is stainless. It can't be tainted. And this quote from Moby Dick is one of my favorites about the color white. I read this and it just hit me and I never forgot it. And this applies to the symbolism here. Even though white is often associated with things that are pleasant and pure, there is a peculiar emptiness about the color white. It is the emptiness of the white that is more disturbing than even the bloodiness of red. So this symbolism comes back and hits us in another way later on in the story. So the Disney movie starts with Snow wishing at a wishing well, and she's wishing for the one she loves, and she's dreaming of all the nice things he'll say. And immediately he shows up, and what does she do? She runs. She's not ready to merge this non-dual. She is scared. She's not ready for this. And he sings back, "One love." So this song is I'm Wishing / One Song. So the lyrics of his are just crazy when you think of it in the non-dual sense and not like these two characters romantically involved sense. One song, I have but one song only for you. One heart tenderly beating, ever entreating, constant and true. One love that has possessed me, one love thrilling me through. Talk about aligned lyrics. So this brings me to say, many things, many songs, many poems, many stories even like passwords you come up with. If you just clear your mind and you're kind of like, and take what comes to you, or get in the creative flow, often what comes through just happens to be some pretty incredible non-dual pointers. And when you start to see it that way, you start to see other things people have created. Now, people often say, oh, so-and-so was enlightened, so-and-so is awakened. But since there aren't actually awakened people, there's only tuning into what you really are, tuning into the inspiration of the author. No, it's not necessary whatsoever. Go back and look at some of the stuff that you've done when you were inspired, and there's probably some things that pop out at you now that you didn't see at that time. So at this point in the story, things really fall apart. The queen asks the mirror, who's the fairest of them all? And and she says Snow White is the fairest of them all. From the separate self perspective, the fairest of them all, it means, so fairest has to mean beautiful. So we're talking about this human girl, and we're talking about her beauty, and the fairest of them all, the most beautiful, the most beautiful, more beautiful than all the rest. What happens if we take a no separate selves perspective? The fairest, capitalize the F in fairest, of them all, capitalize the A in all. Fairest is in fair. That's totally fair. Life isn't fair, life is fair. The fairest of them all. You end up with a hilarious statement. This hit me while journaling, and I laughed for pretty much 24 hours, so I hope it hits you the same way too. So, the queen hires the huntsman to kill Snow, and he can't do it. He spares her, and she runs off into the forest. And at this point, she is horrified. She's terrified. And everything she sees in the forest, all these forest animals become these spooks, these monsters. The roots become animated. They become trees, and everything is terrifying and horrifying to her. And at some point, she surrenders and falls asleep. And when she wakes up, she realizes that those spooks in the light of day are the forest animals, and she feels very, very silly, and she sings to them and makes up with them. So when we are scared of things, and when things come into our lives that spook us, it's very often exactly what will help us. And it's no coincidence that these animals help her clean the house of the dwarves that are named after emotions. And the dwarves, again, not about being politically incorrect, but the dwarves are dwarves because she's been neglecting them. She hasn't been listening to her emotions. So she comes in, she loves them, she takes care of them, and she cleans the house, and she just spends time there. And the forest animals, the previous spooks, help her to do that. So you start to see, and not just in an idealistic way of, oh, fear isn't really real, we don't want to be afraid, so we're not afraid. This is illusion, it's not really real. But you see when something scares you that there's something behind that for you. So the symbolism of her going into the forest in the first place, and those animals and everything being spooks, symbolizes going back through the psyche. And often it's like, and this is what is meant when people describe it as shadow work, and sometimes that makes it sound scarier and more dramatic than it is. But going back through all of the things that we kind of put in our way and those misunderstandings and seeing them in the light of day to be our friends. A similar theme that I really love is in the movie Crimson Peak. And that also has a really nice twist of she's an author. So, was it written or whatever? But in Crimson Peak, the ghosts that are haunting the place and that are the horrors and are the spooks are exactly the guidance telling her what the real threat is. So this is the things we're afraid of. The fear itself is the guidance, and this is misunderstanding. So similar with the dwarves and taking care of the dwarves, taking care of the emotions. It's no coincidence that the dwarves are miners. They go down to the depths and dig out the jewels. That's what our emotions do for us when we really listen to the guidance. They show us what we want. They unclear the path. And in the start of the movie, it's almost as if she's gone sort of like the law of attraction route, and I want these things, and how do I sort of clear the way to have these things? And the prince almost answers back with the one song, and almost like the non-dual, this is it's already won. And I enjoy this synchronicity because it seems like law of attraction appeals more to women, and then the non-duality is like, and then the non-duality seems to appeal more to men. Again, this is just a dumb generalization. And then the law of attraction, they're like, just something I've observed and kind of a cool thing. So at this point, the queen, who's all about beauty for some reason, changes her appearance into... and in the original tale, it's like a cobbler's wife or something, a peasant, some kind of thing. And then in the movie, it's like a hag that she turns herself into. And in the original, she tries to poison, and poison is important here, Snow White 3 times. So the poison, again, it's an attempt of that separate self that is trying to be the best and trying to overcome in that way. Poisoning and ignoring the emotions. And so in the movie, Snow White just eats the apple, and the apple is so symbolic. I've got apple trees behind me. I guess I'll just point that out. Because of the Garden of Eden and the Tree of Knowledge, and that symbolizes duality itself, that we would eat from the Tree of Knowledge and know good from bad and know life from death and know these things. So she eats the apple and she dies. And in the movie, they just they put her on this flower thing, and her body is just kind of stays there. And in the original tale, they put her in a glass casket. And the symbolism of this is amazing. It's like Schrodinger's cat, except for pure awareness. And it's like death is typically something that you want to hide, but Snow White is so pure, so beautiful. She's neither alive nor dead. And we can see this. We can see clearly. So not only is her name Snow White, but she's put in a glass casket. This is like beyond symbolizing purity and awareness and seeing. So in the original tale, this doesn't happen in the Disney one, but in the original tale, the prince and his men come across the glass casket, and they are allowed to take her back for a proper burial. So they grab this glass casket and they're carrying it, and one of the people carrying it trips, and when he does, the apple that's stuck in her throat dislodges and she comes back to life. And at this point, her and the prince are reunited, and they live happily ever after, or as I like to say, happily ever before. because this never really happened.